I've had a few problems with the little deal, and I'm going to go through it and see what it might be or what it might not be. I put on this new carb, which is a Mikuni race carb, along with my Boyson reeds that I've fabricated. The reeds are working real great, right up to about half speed, or when the rear differential goes to second gear, and then it bogs. So what I've done is I've put in a bigger jet, a 200 jet, and I've increased the needle height to all the way out to give it the most gas, but it's still got a little bit of problem. So the reason for this video is to not so much as find the problem, but understanding what it could be and how to find what it might be. Not on this bike, but on any of these little deals. Now what it could be, I could have a carburetor problem as far as it's not working too well, which I don't think that's the problem. I could have a reed problem right in here. I know the reeds are okay, but I've never seen them work at full throttle. I've got I could have a problem with the variator or the belt or the rear clutch spring. I just replaced the rear clutch spring, so I know that's okay. Now, then what I did is I went up and I looked at the spark plug, and it's golden brown. So I put in a new spark plug to see if maybe that could be the problem. Then what I'm going to do, this is kind of a big 4 or 5 part problem. I took the pipe off here, and what I'd like to do is I like to look down on the pipe down here where the gas and the oil comes out. If you have a mess down here on your pipe, you're probably blowing too much. It's your ratio's too high on the oil. I also look down the inlet here and see if there's any leaks. And also, I'm just showing you all the things I go through just to double check. I will take my little light here and I will look. Let's see if I can get this. I look up into the, I can't get the camera that far in there, but I look right up into the exhaust. I also run my fingers down in here and check to see how much oil I'm running. Also, I look for leaks down in here. I look for leaks all the way around the base of any oil. I look for leaks up here on any fluid leaks or anywhere. And then another thing, this is something I ran into a while back, which is I finally figured out what it is. I have a number of different crankshafts, and what I've done, this is your alternator, generator, coil. Anyway, the other side of the crankshaft is right here. On this side of the crankshaft and the other side of the crankcase, there is a little rubber O-ring like this that goes around the shaft. Now what I found is a lot of these Taiwanese shafts their run out is way too much. That's what's got to be. That means they wobble when they spin, just a tiny bit too much. But what that wobbling does is that reams out that center of the O-ring and lets oil, engine oil, come out. And what the engine oil does, it leaks out very, very slowly. It gets on the windings in here, and it gets on the magnets. Now, at low speed you won't notice it, but at high speeds what happens is that oil will short out the coils, and you won't get the spark, the power to go up to the coil and then down the line right to the spark. I've had to replace that a couple times. The next thing I look at, remember, you have to look at the symptoms and think, okay, well, what is it doing? What could be the problem? Sometimes it's the littlest, simplest bullshit thing you never even thought about. Now I want to see if my brakes maybe were leaking. There's transmission oil that is right down in here, which is 1040 weight. Now oil on your brake pads is absolutely poison. Any oil on these brake pads is like cyanide. What happens is When the oil gets on here and saturates into the pad, then the oil will stick onto the rim and you won't go anywhere. That's why you always want to keep these pads real clean. Now, I don't show any signs of heat, which there's no bluing. You would see blue somewhere around here that would show high heat. So I know that the wheel isn't dragging. It also looks like the brakes are working okay and there's no oil. So the next thing I'm going to do is take the other side off on the transmission side. And the way you do that is to pull your clutch here, and then I'll have to empty my oil right here, and I'll pull this panel. I'll slowly pry it off, let the oil fall out, and then I'll pull the rear transmission and check it. Now on the rear transmission, this is what I found happens with these big engines. This is just some of the things I've run across. You know, weird little things. This right here is a inner clutch rear pulley bearing. Now, this is a genuine Honda bearing, but on a lot of these Taiwan fancy Dio clutches and things like that, these bearings are, for some reason, they fail. And when they fail, the bearings inside here, you may lose 2 or 3 bearings, you won't notice it. But on the shaft, when this thing is running, it'll wobble back and forth because the bearing is gone. It's basically shot. So this is one thing to check on your clutch. Not your clutch, but your rear pulley. And then now the next thing, this is your drive shaft right here. That comes out of, I think it's the primary shaft that comes out of the transmission that hooks onto your clutch. This bearing right here is pressed in. Just imagine there's a big aluminum piece right here. This bearing is pressed in right here. It's real easy to tap them out and press them back in. But for some reason on this bearing sometimes goes out, it seizes up, and it gets hot. And what it will do is it'll slow you down really a lot when you get up to speed. If that happens, then it'll really start to disintegrate. I've had one case where the bearing actually, I was coming up to a stop sign and my rear wheel just locked up. It locked up really bad because this had seized. So these 2 bearings are ones to look at. There also is another bearing that goes back here, which is pressed into the case. That one, the shaft, it's a little tiny bearing, but it just kind of sits in there like this. And to get it out, you need a blind bully bearing puller, which I don't have. But that's where I'm at so far. And anyway, I'm going to see how well that's going to work. And then what I want to do is I want to take my tire and replace it with my new tire. And I've used my marker on this new tire. Sorry about the mess. This is my new tire here. And I painted the Pirelli on this side and this side with tire marker. So I think it looks kind of cool. So I'm going to replace that. But that's where I'm at so far with the Racing Dio. It's the Boyce & Reeds are really kick-ass as far as low speed to about, I'd say, a little over half throttle, and then it bogs. And I just can't figure out the bog. So I'm going to go check all my preliminaries first. It could be nothing more than a spark plug. Maybe I put a colder plug in it. It could be a loose connection. Who knows? But we'll see. Otherwise, it's running good. Both of my pumps here are working great. I'm running about 180 degrees wide open, so it's working real good. Okay.